Today we venture into the dark and disturbing world of Jeffrey Epstein and his infamous Little Black Book. On its own, this book and the names within it mean little, but combining them with the flight logs from Epstein's private plane, the Lolita Express, and the recently unsealed testimony from some of Epstein's closest former friends, business associates, and victims provides a chilling look into the darkest secrets of the world's elite. It isn't a mere collection of contacts, it's a disturbing ledger from the shadows where power and depravity intertwine to reveal a story that is so compelling, even the most skeptical are forced to stop and listen. So you clicked because you're seeking the truth behind the sinister facade and looking to answer the most important question that still lingers years after the financier's death. How did so many famous actors and directors, esteemed scientists, big-named billionaires, politicians, and multiple royal families all get wrapped up with one of the shadiest figures in recent history? Today we'll be answering this and more as we navigate through a minefield of allegations along an unsettling journey where finding real answers seems difficult by design. Like the crimes he's been accused of, Jeffrey Epstein is a person who needs no introduction. But the story of how his address book became a focal point for both investigators and the media is an entirely different story. In fact, the reason the public knows about the book and considers it significant in the first place is because of the unique circumstances that led to its discovery. It all began around 2009 when one of Epstein's house managers, Alfredo Rodriguez, stole the book from Epstein's home and began attempting to sell it on the black market for $50,000. Having worked for Epstein for many years, Rodriguez claimed to have intimate knowledge of Epstein's crimes against teenagers and indicated to potential buyers that many of the people listed within the books were either closely related to Epstein's crimes, had knowledge of those crimes, or were themselves complicit in some way. He claimed that the book was the holy grail of information and circled the names of several people who he indicated were especially significant in some way. But physically, the book is nothing special. It's a 90-page directory with the names of more than 1,500 people listed alongside a mix of phone numbers and addresses for each. But at the time that Rodriguez was attempting to sell it, an investigation into Epstein's sex crimes against underage girls had been launched by the FBI. So Rodriguez even offered one of the attorneys in charge of prosecuting the opportunity to buy it. He claimed that the book would lead them down a rabbit hole and reveal more about Epstein than anyone could ever guess. He claimed to be betraying his employer because his life was in danger and he needed protection money. However, before he could secure a buyer, his actions were reported to the FBI. Rodriguez was then arrested by federal authorities and the book was confiscated. From there, it stayed in the possession of the FBI and out of the public's eye until at least 2012. This is when it fell into the hands of a freelance journalist named Nick Bryant. Bryant searched through the book, saw the names it contained, and noted the ones that had been circled. Among them were Ghislaine Maxwell, Leslie Wexner, Donald Trump, and many more. We'll come back to each of those in a bit. For some of the circled names, Rodriguez had made small notes in pen regarding their relationship to Epstein's crimes, such as how names listed under a section titled Cleaners were also noted as witnesses. However, most of them were merely circled without explanation, and by the time Bryant acquired the book, Rodriguez was no longer alive to elaborate on what it meant to be circled. He had unfortunately already passed away at the age of 60 from mesothelioma. After this, Bryant then spent over 2 years pitching various studies on Epstein to publications around the world without much luck. Despite possessing what he believed may be the most important document to be unearthed in recent memory, but few seemed interested in featuring the story until he pitched it to the website Gawker in 2015. After this, the book's story took on a life of its own as public speculation into what it meant to be listed and, furthermore, what it meant to be circled by Rodriguez. Surprisingly, this speculation was not unfounded, as a lawsuit filed by one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Guthrie, alleged that Epstein acted as a facilitator of sex between underage girls and the world's wealthy and powerful. It was inevitable that the book and Virginia's claim would eventually be connected, so many began referring to the book as Epstein's client list. While calling it that may have been a bit of a stretch, the public's interest was piqued, and many have spent years chasing real, definitive answers without luck. While it's no secret that Epstein was a wealthy and well-connected man in his later years, this wasn't always true. He grew up in a middle-class household, living with a father who worked as a groundkeeper. He wasn't an exceptional child, and he even dropped out of New York University while studying mathematic physiology. His introduction to the world of finance began in 1976 when he became a junior assistant to a floor trader at Bear Stearns. Here, he rubbed elbows with wealthy New York financiers and integrated himself with some of the most knowledgeable traders in the country. Those that knew him said that he was a social chameleon, capable of charming and talking to anyone he chose, and he used this charm to continue making big moves within one of New York's most well-known brokerage firms. Soon, he was promoted to an options trader, and in 1980, after working there for only 4 years, he became a limited partner. In 1981, Epstein left Bear Stearns to found his own consulting firm centered around recovering embezzled and stolen assets from fraudulent money managers and lawyers. This is rather ironic, since in recent years it's become clear that Epstein himself was also involved in fraudulent business activities around this time. After this, he then founded his own financial management firm called J. Epstein & Company and began courting new clients, surrounding him exclusively with the wealthiest people in New York and earning him his own fortune to spend on a luxurious lifestyle, including purchasing his own private island where many of his future crimes would take place. As Epstein continued to move up the social ladder, he then began exclusively accepting clients with at least $1 billion in assets for him to manage. Leslie Wexner, the chairman and CEO of L Brands and Victoria's Secret, was by far his largest and most recognizable client. If you recall, Wexner's name was circled inside Epstein's book, indicating that, according to Rodriguez, he was also somehow involved with Epstein's more nefarious acts. Epstein and Wexner met in 1986, at which time the pair quickly became inseparable, traveling to Europe to attend fashion shows, going on shopping trips, and making appearances at parties together. They became so close that Epstein often referred to himself as Wexner's surrogate son, and Wexner is on record saying that Epstein was a most loyal friend with excellent judgment and unusually high standards. Wexner trusted Epstein so much that he even granted him full power of attorney over his affairs and gave him a position as a trustee on the board of the Wexner Foundation, Wexner's personal philanthropic organizations. Epstein used this power to make both himself and Wexner large amounts of money throughout their time together. However, after Epstein was first accused of sex crimes in the early 2000s, Wexner took a step back, indicating that his and Epstein's friendship had been overplayed. And in 2019, he even indicated that Epstein had misappropriated vast sums of money from him and his family. He made this claim to the media several times, yet for some reason never formally went to the police, further fueling speculation that the claims were either fabricated or that Epstein had held some sort of dirt on Wexner. Neither of these allegations have been proven, nor has the fact that Wexner was involved in Epstein's crime in any capacity. Since Epstein's arrest, Wexner has indicated that he was completely unaware of Epstein's crimes and that, upon learning of them, he immediately regretted their association wholeheartedly. However, the many shady dealings and scandals that Victoria's Secret has been involved with throughout the years, such as multiple sexual harassment lawsuits filed against the company's executives, continues to draw criticism and raise eyebrows. People wonder how it was possible that Epstein could have had such close relationships with so many at the company, including Wexner, without them realizing what was happening right under their noses. And several of Epstein's victims say that he approached them claiming to be a talent for Victoria's Secret, as well as various other modeling agencies that he was associated with. Since the rest of Epstein's business clients have chosen to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, let's now shift our focus to his friend group. And we'll begin with two of the most often cited names listed within Epstein's book, that of Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, two of the most divisive US presidents in recent history. Now, Donald Trump has been a prominent New York businessman since the 1980s, so it should come as no surprise that he and Epstein would be acquainted with one another to some degree. Trump spent years working in New York's real estate sector and meeting with New York City's wealthiest, which is why Ghislaine Maxwell first arranged a sit-down between him and Epstein sometime around the late 80s. For those who are unaware, Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's longtime girlfriend for over 25 years, but she also wore many professional hats throughout their relationship. She was Epstein's personal assistant, his staff supervisor, his media coordinator, and the person who many of Epstein's former employees refer to as the lady of the house. She was also the person who coordinated the meetups between Epstein and his underage victims, and because of her family's many connections, she also played an integral role in introducing Epstein to many of the people that would later be listed within his book. Although reports vary about exactly how, when, and where Epstein and Maxwell first became acquainted, most believe that her father, Robert Maxwell, was the person who introduced the pair sometime in the 1980s. But getting back to Trump, since Epstein's first arrest in 2009, Trump has attempted to distance himself from his former friend by saying that the two of them were acquaintances and nothing more. However, it doesn't take much research to prove this claim false. Trump's and Epstein's friendship throughout the 80s and 90s is well documented, as the two were often seen having dinner together in fancy restaurants and ogling women while attending black tie events. Plus, not only is Trump's name listed and circled inside Epstein's book, so are the names and numbers of several of his family members, including 3 separate numbers for his ex-wife, Ivana, 2 for his daughter Ivanka, and 2 for his current wife, Melania. There are also numbers for Trump's younger brother and his younger brother's ex-wife, Robert and Blaine Trump, his security team, the main number for the Trump organization, and a final number marked for emergency use only. Furthermore, flight records show that Donald Trump was a reoccurring passenger aboard Epstein's private plane, and that he hosted Epstein at his private resort, Mar-a-Lago, many times throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Notably, Trump's ex-wife Marla and 2 of his children, Tiffany and Eric, were also both listed in the flight records. There are also countless photographs of Trump and Epstein together. As for what Trump himself has directly said about Epstein, in 2002 he told New York Magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." Now, as damning as this sounds, there's no evidence that on the younger side is a reference to the underage girls that Epstein is proven to have abused. Even if Trump had been aware of Epstein's crimes, which has not been proven, admitting his knowledge to a reporter on the record would have been a catastrophically stupid move. Since Epstein's first arrest in 2009, Trump has kept his comments about his and Epstein's relationship to a bare minimum, saying, "I was not a fan of his. That I can tell you." Trump also claims that while Epstein did visit Mar-a-Lago often, he was never a member of the exclusive club. This claim is still debated. However, one thing that is clear is that Trump and Epstein did have a falling out of some kind around 2005, years before any of the sex crimes were uncovered. According to some, their breakup involved a real estate deal that went bad, but others report that Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago after he was reported by another club member for sexually assaulting that member's underage daughter. After this, their contact with one another was minimal. But even after breaking things off with Epstein, Trump and his family continued to be involved with Ghislaine Maxwell. There are numerous photographs of her with Trump and his family at Mar-a-Lago, around New York City, and at various events around the world. When asked about Maxwell's arrest for sex trafficking in July of 2020, Trump gaffed and said, "Her boyfriend was either killed or committed suicide in jail. She's now in jail. Yeah, I wish her well." In the recently unsealed testimony from January of 2024, one of Epstein's accusers, Johanna Schoberg, said that she once travelled alongside Epstein to Trump's casino. However, she also claimed that she had never met or had sexual relations with Trump as she had Epstein. Also, none of the testimony in these documents explicitly referenced any illegal activities committed by Trump. Nevertheless, Trump's association with Epstein is still suspect, and the fact that he has been involved in numerous sexual scandals of his own, and has even been found liable for sexually abusing and defaming a woman named E. Jean Carroll, has left many wondering what other information may someday be revealed. But while we're on the topic of sexual scandals, let's turn the page and talk about Bill Clinton, who is arguably the king of sexual scandals. Like Trump, Clinton's name is listed in both Epstein's book and flight logs, where it's noted that he flew aboard Epstein's plane upwards of 26 separate times. But their relationship goes back much further than that. According to officials from Bill and Hillary Clinton's staff, Bill first met Epstein during a White House furnishing fundraiser in the early 1990s, and their relationship was purely work-related. Officially, few comments about this relation have been made by either Bill or Hillary, but a Clinton staffer once said President Clinton was not friends with Epstein, and to suggest otherwise is categorically false. Their brief acquaintance revolved strictly around philanthropic work. However, we know that this is not completely true, and that their relationship certainly goes deeper than that. During Bill's time in office, Epstein visited the White House at least 17 separate times for various events. How much one-to-one interaction the two had during these visits is unknown, but after Clinton's second term as president impeachment ended in 2001, he and Epstein continued to have dinner together often. Pictures of the two of them together exist online, and Clinton has publicly praised Epstein for his shrewd business sense as a financial advisor. Epstein even kept an unusual painting of Clinton inside his New York apartment. This painting depicts Bill Clinton lounging in a chair within the Oval Office while wearing a blue dress and bright red heels. Epstein reportedly loved this painting and showed it to all his guests as they entered through the front door. When asked about the painting, a Clinton staffer said, "The painting doesn't indicate anything other than Epstein had bad taste in art." And while there are no official records linking Clinton to Little St. James or the crimes that occurred there, it is verified that Clinton did take several flights with Epstein to Africa alongside actors Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker. We'll be discussing Spacey a little later as we dive into Epstein's connection in Hollywood. During one of these flights in 2002, one of Epstein's victims, Shantae Davies, reportedly gave Clinton a massage at the request of Ghislaine Maxwell. There is a photo of this massage proving that it did happen, but there's no evidence that the interaction went any further. In her deposition years later, Davies asserts that President Clinton was a perfect gentleman during the trip, and I saw absolutely no foul play involving him. On the other hand, in the recently released documents from January 2024, Johanna Schoberg, the same victim that had claimed she had never personally met Trump, stated that Epstein once ominously told her that Bill Clinton likes them young. And once again, the word young is open for interpretation and doesn't necessarily mean underage. After Epstein's first arrest in 2008, Bill and Hillary attempted to distance themselves from Epstein and his associates as much as possible, yet images exist of Ghislaine Maxwell attending Bill and Hillary Clinton's daughter, Chelsea Clinton's, wedding, proving that they did not sever all ties completely. She was one of over 500 guests that attended and was invited due to her and Chelsea's close relationship that originated from their work together on the Clinton Global Initiative. Without a doubt, uncovering the many photographs and videos of Trump and Clinton with Epstein has been a crucial part of preventing them from denying their association outright. And the American media has done an excellent job of making those images front page news since Epstein's arrest in 2019. However, as many have pointed out, the media wasn't always so vigilant. If you recall, Nick Bryant spent over 2 years searching for a publication to feature his story on Epstein, and it took until federal charges were filed against him in the Southern District of New York for newspapers and magazines to begin seriously covering the many allegations. While some may say these news organizations were simply reporting on what was trending at the time, others have speculated that they may have been deliberately engaging in a media blackout campaign, as even after the lawsuit was filed, reporting was scattered at best. There seemed to be no concerted effort to inform the public of Epstein's crimes until the public themselves became aware of the story through social media. Why they would do this is up for debate, but there is a theory that has persisted online for years. The name of Steve Forbes and Stephen Dunbar Johnson were both listed inside Epstein's books, along with contact information for both. Respectively, they are the editor-in-chief for Forbes magazine and the president international of the New York Times Company. Many have questioned how close these men were to Epstein and if their relationship may have influenced their company's reporting. Steve Forbes has confirmed that he met with Epstein on multiple occasions, but maintained that their relationship was strictly professional and that they were not friends. Epstein was featured in Forbes magazine with an article titled "The Talented Mr. Epstein," as well as several others, but these articles focused solely on his business dealings and his connections with the rich and famous. As for Steve Dunbar Johnson, there is little information available to the public about his relationship with Epstein or why he may have been listed in the first place. But these two are by no means alone. Also listed was the former editor of Time magazine, Walter Isaacson, 60 Minutes journalist Mike Wallace, and broadcast journalist Barbara Walters. Epstein is also known to have dined with Charlie Rose on multiple occasions within Rose's Manhattan home. More notably, however, Rupert Murdoch, the media proprietor behind hundreds of publishing and broadcasting outlets around the world, is also listed. But the extent of their relationship is also shrouded in mystery. Other than by virtue of being rich, many have questioned how exactly Epstein became acquainted with so many of these prominent journalists and media tycoons. And the answer to that, like so many other things in Epstein's life, may revolve around Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father, deceased media mogul, fraudster, and former member of the UK Parliament, Robert Maxwell, had seemingly infinite reach within the world of news and reporting, which certainly gave both Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein invaluable inroads into both British and American media organisations. One of the most inexplicable parts of Epstein's past that we've yet to discuss was how he managed to secure a non-prosecutorial agreement for sex trafficking charges in 2008. While I've mentioned Epstein's first arrest multiple times, it's time to take a detailed look at that arrest, his charges, his accusers, and the people surrounding him that may have been involved but have never faced justice. Between 2002 and 2005, Epstein is confirmed to have abused dozens of girls using a pyramid-style recruitment system where girls as young as 14 were offered money and physical goods for either sexual favors or for recruiting other girls into the same system. This was the system that Ghislaine Maxwell primarily organized by first telling the girls they would be giving Epstein a massage, which would then turn into something more sinister once they were alone in the room with Epstein. For these acts, Epstein was facing charges for international sex trafficking and child abuse in numbers that could have easily warranted a life sentence. Yet the federal prosecutor presiding over his case, Jim Acosta, decided to give Epstein what is commonly referred to as a sweetheart deal. Instead of pursuing all viable charges, Epstein was offered a federal, non-prosecutorial agreement for many of his most egregious crimes in exchange for a guilty plea for the lesser charge of solicitation of prostitution. As part of the deal, Epstein was required to register as a sex offender and pay restitution to over 3 dozen victims, but instead of a life sentence, he was given only 18 months in a work release program. This meant that instead of going to an actual prison, Epstein was housed inside a private facility where he was able to leave for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days per week, to run his businesses, attend scheduled family functions, and do anything else he desired. Making matters even worse, his sentence was later reduced to only 13 months for good behavior, and all details of the agreement, including the agreement's very existence, were sealed. Not even Epstein's first victims were allowed to know that any type of deal had been established. Furthermore, it's been reported that the door to Epstein's cell was deliberately left unlocked and that he was allowed to roam around the private facility freely. The guards charged with watching over him were even paid directly by Epstein, and he was allowed to be chauffeured around by a private driver as opposed to actual prison guards. This is all highly unusual, but one of the most shocking facts about Epstein's incarceration was that he was even permitted to receive guests privately inside his cell. The logbooks containing the names of these guests have been destroyed, but some have alleged that his abuse continued even while behind bars. In a memo released by the Justice Department following an extensive investigation into this highly unusual agreement, it was decided that prosecutor Jim Acosta exercised poor judgment by offering the deal to Epstein in the first place, but that he had not violated the law. In his own defense, Acosta has stated publicly that the decision to make an agreement was formed due to the lack of tangible evidence against Epstein. He points out that having enough evidence to charge is not the same as having enough evidence to convict, and that he simply felt outmatched by Epstein's impressive list of private lawyers. He was also worried that taking the case to trial would be a mistake and could possibly allow Epstein to walk free. Yet, some wonder if the story goes deeper, as Acosta has also stated that he was ordered to offer Epstein a lenient sentence because Epstein belonged to intelligence. He was told that the decision to not prosecute was above his pay grade and that he was just following orders from those above him. This comment in and of itself has sparked many questions regarding what else we don't know about Epstein's past. During his time as a financial consultant in the 1980s, Epstein often bragged to people that he was a secret intelligence agent with contacts as high up as the White House. Many at the time thought that he was just blowing hot air, but Acosta's comments cast a new light on those claims and have forced many to speculate about who else within the government Epstein may have been involved with. Former Secretary of State and 2004 presidential candidate John Kerry's home telephone number is listed in Epstein's book, alongside the direct number to his presidential campaign's headquarters. Billionaire Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City and a 2020 presidential candidate, is also listed alongside his home address, multiple phone numbers, and a single email address. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers appears in Epstein's flight logs more than once. Notably, former United States Solicitor General Kenneth Starr, the man who led the investigation into Bill Clinton's misdeeds during the Whitewater investigation, was also listed alongside recently deceased former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Kissinger and Epstein served on the Council of Foreign Relations together. Famously, Epstein is also known to have had multiple fake passports under different names, but it's unclear where these passports came from and what their intended use was. However, if we back up and dig even deeper into Acosta's deal, we can reveal even more potentially shady dealings. One that the attorneys helped negotiate the deal. Alan Dershowitz has even been named by one of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Jeffrey, as having abused her at least 6 separate times. Virginia is the person who would eventually bring lawsuits against Ghislaine Maxwell and multiple others she accused of being Epstein's clients, including Prince Andrew. But we'll return to that in just a bit as well. For now, we'll focus on Alan Dershowitz, a former Harvard law professor who has represented or aided in the defense of multiple big-name clients, including O.J. Simpson, Julian Assange, Harvey Weinstein, and Donald Trump. Dershowitz is said to have first become acquainted with Epstein through their mutual friend, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, and was present on Epstein's private island when multiple underage girls were transported there for sexual purposes. Virginia also alleges that Dershowitz was a direct witness to several other instances of sex trafficking that occurred on the island in the early 2000s. Dershowitz has denied these allegations, and interestingly, Virginia has since rescinded them, saying, "I was very young at the time. It was a very stressful and traumatic environment." She now claims that she can't be 100% sure that the person Maxwell and Epstein arranged for her to have sex with was Dershowitz or not. Yet, Virginia's claims were later corroborated in a separate 2018 lawsuit filed by another of Epstein's accusers, Sarah Ransom, who stated that Epstein ordered her to have sex with several famous people, including Dershowitz, multiple times. Dershowitz once again vehemently denies the allegation, and several defamation lawsuits have been filed both against and by Dershowitz in various courts as a result of this allegation. As of now, no criminal charges have been filed against Dershowitz, but it's hard to overlook the things that he has said and written about underage abuse throughout his life. For instance, in 1997, he wrote a controversial op-ed titled "Statutory Rape is an Outdated Concept," in which he asserts that 25% of all women claim to have sex before their 15th birthday, and that the age of consent should be lowered to accommodate society's shifting morals. He also laments how, in some states, an 18-year-old who impregnates a 15-year-old can be sentenced to up to 40 years in prison, and that if a 16-year-old can choose to have an abortion, she can also choose who to have sex with, even if the person she chooses is much older than her. Dershowitz's name was listed and circled within Epstein's book, but as disturbing as this is, Dershowitz is merely the beginning of Epstein's connections to renowned attorneys and law educators. Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, who was once appointed to be the US's special envoy to Northern Ireland by President Clinton, was also involved with Epstein to the point that he publicly called him a friend on multiple occasions. Dozens of telephone numbers for him and his law office, Piper Rudnick, were also present within the book. So far, none of the people mentioned in this section, besides Dershowitz, have been named explicitly. However, another of Epstein's victims, an anonymous woman known in court documents as Jane Doe 3, claims that Epstein facilitated sex between her and dozens of people. In court documents, it's declared that Epstein also trafficked Jane Doe 3 for sexual purposes to many other powerful men, including numerous prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, a well-known prime minister, and other world leaders. Her accusation leads up directly to our next big name, Prince Andrew. While the British royal family is no stranger to controversy, speculation about Prince Andrew's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein dominated headlines in the 2010s, forcing him to make multiple public statements and give a sit-down interview to address the controversy. This controversy primarily revolved around when exactly Prince Andrew severed ties with Epstein after his guilty plea in 2008. However, media interest was renewed when Johanna Sjoberg, the same accuser who stated that Epstein once told her that Bill Clinton likes them young, also said that Prince Andrew once physically placed his hand on her breast inside Jeffrey Epstein's New York City apartment in 2001. And that night, Johanna alleges that she and Prince Andrew were together alongside Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Virginia Jeffrey when Maxwell produced a puppet that bore a likeness to Prince Andrew. Maxwell then sat Virginia and Prince Andrew down beside one another for a group photo and placed the puppet in Virginia's lap. Maxwell then encouraged Johanna to sit on Prince Andrew's lap as the puppet was sitting on Virginia's. Once Johanna was seated, Maxwell then placed the puppet's hand on Virginia's breast, and Prince Andrew followed suit, cupping Johanna's breasts for the photo. This was done as a joke, Johanna later told the court, but other victims suffered far worse. Jane Doe 3 testified that she was pressured into having sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions in 3 different geographic locations when she was still a minor. Virginia Jeffrey has also backed up these claims and alleged that she too had been coerced into having sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions when she was just 17 years old. During an episode of NBC's Dateline, Virginia revealed exactly how her initial meeting with the prince was arranged. "The first time in London, I was so young. Ghislaine woke me up in the morning and said, 'You're going to meet a prince today.' I didn't know at that point I was going to be trafficked to that prince. And then, that night, Prince Andrew came to her house in London and we went out to Club Tramp. Prince Andrew got me alcohol. It was in the VIP section. I'm pretty sure it was vodka." Virginia states that after leaving Club Tramp, Maxwell then told her, "He's coming back to the house and I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein." Prince Andrew has denied these allegations while also claiming to have never met Virginia Giuffre. However, a photograph of the pair standing together alongside Ghislaine Maxwell has been made available online. Prince Andrew claims to have no recollection whatsoever of these meetings or the photograph and has suggested the image may be fake. He said, "Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored, but I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken." To explain his proven connection to Epstein, Prince Andrew claimed they first met in 1999 while he was attempting to establish himself as an international businessman after leaving the British Navy. He says that their relationship was centered completely around business and that while he did stay overnight inside a number of Epstein's homes throughout the years, these visits were infrequent, occurring only once or twice each year. He stayed with Epstein out of convenience, not for any nefarious purpose. In a statement made to NBC News, Prince Andrew said, "At no stage during the limited time I spent with him did I see, witness, or suspect any behaviour of the sort that subsequently led to his arrest and conviction." Unfortunately, like most of the claims made against Epstein's alleged clients, neither Virginia Giuffre, Johanna Sjoberg, or Epstein's multiple unnamed victims have ever been able to provide concrete evidence against Prince Andrew, meaning that no charges have ever been filed. However, in 2021, Virginia did sue Prince Andrew in New York's civil court for sexual assault. This suit had the potential to finally provide some concrete answers, as both Virginia and Prince Andrew was scheduled to be deposed under oath. However, before this could happen, an out-of-court settlement was reached for an undisclosed amount in February of 2022. This settlement did not include an admission of liability by Prince Andrew or anyone else. Following it, a statement given to the media by Prince Andrew's lawyer reads, "It is known that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked countless young girls over many years. Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Mrs. Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. He pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Epstein by supporting the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims." The prince has also made a sizable donation to Virginia's charity for victims of sex trafficking as part of the agreement. But, lest you think that the British royal family has a monopoly on Epstein-related controversy, 2 telephone numbers for Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman were also listed inside Epstein's book, which has raised many questions about their relationship. Both numbers are based in the United States. One is preceded by a Washington, D.C. area code, while the other belongs to an area code in Northern Virginia. There are also 2 other things linking Epstein to Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince. As stated earlier, Epstein kept a secret passport under a fake name in his New York residence, but what I failed to mention at the time was that the address on that passport was a residence in Saudi Arabia. Additionally, alongside his painting of Bill Clinton, Epstein had a framed photograph of the Crown Prince hanging within his apartment. As of now, not much else has been uncovered about the connection or their relationship, and it's unlikely, given Saudi Arabia's track record, that any more information will be released voluntarily. Perhaps the only thing more surprising about Epstein than his connection to royalty is his philanthropic work. Yes, throughout his life, Epstein referred to himself as a scientific philanthropist many times and is estimated to have donated upwards of $20 million per year to various charities, research groups, and universities. One of his largest donations occurred in 2003 when he gifted $6.5 million to Harvard, earning him a spot on the university's Mind, Brain, and Behavior Advisory Committee. He also had connections within MIT, Princeton, the Santa Fe Institute, and the University of Pennsylvania. While some may see this as nothing more than a way to acquire tax breaks, Epstein obviously had a real interest in science and is known to have taken part in discussions surrounding some questionable subjects. For instance, Epstein was very intrigued by eugenics and once suggested that starvation was essential to population control. He was also known to frequently meet with large groups of scientists at various events to discuss some rather vague topics, such as when he hosted 21 physicists inside his home on Little St. James for a meeting on gravity. Among his many contacts within the scientific world were paleontologist and evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould, neurologist Oliver Sacks, molecular engineer George M. Church, and theoretical physicist Frank Wilczek. Naturally, many of these scientists also found their way into Epstein's book, including Nobel Prize winner Gerald Edelman, physicist Murray Gell-Mann, cosmologist Lawrence Krauss, evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers, and theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking. Of those, few claim to have had any real long-lasting friendship with Epstein. However, some did claim to have witnessed some very strange behaviour while around him. Physicist Murray Gell-Mann once remarked, "There are always pretty ladies around when he goes to dinner, Shay Epstein." In one truly bizarre encounter inside Epstein's Manhattan apartment, a mix of research scientists and fashion models were both hosted simultaneously. One anonymous attendee of that event stated there was little interaction between these two very different groups, but that Epstein felt equally at home talking to both separately. He was obviously a very intelligent and social person, but at one point in the night, Epstein gave a speech while one of his female staffers walked casually over him to provide Epstein with a neck massage. It's not known who this young woman was or if she was underage at the time. If she has come forward, her name has not been publicly released. The most recognizable name mentioned so far on this list must be that of Stephen Hawking, who made multiple trips to Epstein's Islands for various scientific events. Epstein seemed to like Hawking very much, as he once paid to have a submarine modified to accommodate Hawking's wheelchair so that he could venture underwater for the first time in his life. However, it should be said that neither Hawking nor any of the scientists mentioned thus far have been implicated in Epstein's sex crimes by any of his accusers. However, the same cannot be said for Marvin Minsky, a well-respected and award-winning cognitive scientist primarily involved in researching artificial intelligence. Minsky is known to have visited Epstein's private island multiple times, and Virginia Jeffrey alleges that during one of those visits, Ghislaine Maxwell ordered her to have sex with him. This allegedly occurred around 2001 when Virginia was only 17, but the allegations were not made public until Virginia's lawsuit in 2015. Unfortunately, Minsky died of a cerebral hemorrhage in 2016 before any charges could be filed against him. Since these allegations were first made public, Minsky's widow, Gloria Rudish, has stated that it would have been impossible for her late husband to have engaged in any type of sexual misconduct with Virginia because she herself was by Minsky's side during every trip he took to one of Epstein's homes. Minsky's estate has also not been sued in civil court by Virginia or any of Epstein's other accusers, meaning that the extent of his involvement still cannot be stated with certainty. If you search through the recently released documents we've referred many times throughout this video, you'll no doubt see the names of famous actors and directors mentioned throughout, including those of Alec Baldwin, Woody Allen, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Kevin Spacey. You'll also find musicians such as Mick Jagger and Jimmy Buffett, as well as the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Many of these names were also listed inside Epstein's book. However, the question of how closely connected Epstein was to each of them, like so many other things in Epstein's life, is still hotly debated. Famously, Kevin Spacey, Bill Cosby, and Harvey Weinstein have all faced allegations and charges of heinous sex crimes of their own. Spacey has been accused of sexual assault by more than 30 people, resulting in dozens of charges ranging from non-consensual groping to attempted sex with an underage boy. Many of these charges have since been dropped or defeated in court after lengthy trials, but those levied against disgraced director Harvey Weinstein were not. He has been accused of sexual misconduct by over 80 women and convicted of multiple counts of sexual assault and rape in both New York and Los Angeles, receiving a combined total of nearly 40 years in prison. Likewise, Bill Cosby has been accused by over 60 women of everything from sexual harassment and sexual misconduct to drug-related sexual assault and child sexual abuse. These allegations span as far back as the 1960s and have led to dozens of criminal charges and other civil suits filed by Cosby's alleged victims, many of which are still being litigated. But all this begs the question, how exactly did Epstein become associated with so many famous celebrities, particularly those accused of sex crimes, and was there any overlap between their crimes and his? Furthermore, could any of the other celebrities listed, the ones that have not been accused of sex crimes, have either been aware or complicit in them and their connection has yet to be uncovered? Well, the answer to this is somewhat complicated. While many of Epstein, Spacey, Cosby, and Weinstein's crimes were taking place simultaneously, little evidence has been uncovered that they were aware of each other's sinister proclivities. Yes, Kevin Spacey flew with Bill Clinton and Epstein on his private plane, but it seems that Epstein and Spacey's relationship was surface level at best. While it may seem that flying aboard someone's private plane would mean they are on good terms with that person, sharing a private flight is actually a fairly regular occurrence among the wealthy. Many of the people in Epstein's flight logs have stated that they were just hitching a ride when other travel arrangements fell through, and that Epstein would offer a seat to anyone who asked, provided he either met or heard of them before. Epstein was always eager to add another famous name to his little black book, and in this habit, we may find the answer to our next question. How did so many celebrities who claim to have never personally met Epstein come to be listed in the first place? Johanna Schoberg, one of Epstein's accusers, has a theory. While it's clear that Epstein was well connected in some circles, particularly to politicians, attorneys, and other money managers, Epstein often exaggerated his closeness with others, primarily those within Hollywood, because their names were among the most recognizable and adored. He would frequently drop the names of A-list celebs like Leonardo DiCaprio and Cate Blanchett in casual conversation. But Johanna states that she believes Epstein had never actually met either of them in person. Collecting their names in his book may have simply been a way of stroking his own ego while also continuing to build upon the mysterious persona that he had intentionally crafted for himself over many years. The same goes for many others who claim to have never met the infamous financier. Some celebrities, such as Michael Jackson, did appear to know Epstein on a more personal level, as he visited Epstein's private island on more than one occasion, but Johanna claims she never witnessed Jackson engaging in any illegal activity. Truthfully, out of all of Epstein's potential connections, those in Hollywood are the weakest and have very little other than blind speculation to support them. So, after hearing all that, where does that leave us? Based on the testimony of countless victims and witnesses, it's impossible to deny that Epstein was the central figure in a human trafficking ring where underage girls were used for sexual purposes by Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and some of the world's most powerful people. Yet, the identities of many of those people has still not been released to the public, possibly because the allegations cannot be proven, because the crimes themselves took place over 2 decades ago in many circumstances. As for what can be said definitively about Epstein's little black book, that's up for interpretation. If what Alfredo Rodriguez claimed was true, people like Donald Trump, Alan Dershowitz, Leslie Wexner, and many more were all somehow involved in Epstein's crimes, either as direct witnesses, participants, or in some other unspecified way. However, as many have pointed out, can we really trust the word of a man who stole from and attempted to blackmail his own employer for money? Did Rodriguez actually have insider knowledge on the sex trafficking ring, or did he simply go down the list and circle the biggest names he recognized along with Epstein's closest friends because he thought it would make the book look more valuable to potential buyers? The answer to that is up to you to decide. Perhaps we will someday have more definitive answers, possibly as a result of one of the several ongoing civil suits currently being litigated. Or perhaps Epstein succeeded in taking his biggest secrets to the grave with him. For now, we'll simply have to wait and see.